Hey, everybody, welcome back to Up the Vibe. And today I'm welcoming back to the podcast Greg Sullivan, the founder and director of JCETI, the Japan Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Hi, Greg, how are you doing?
Hi, Joe. Nice to see you again. It's been too long. Good to see you. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm doing well. Thank you.
oh, good. Yeah, it's been, I think, a year and a half I was looking that we last spoke, and a lot has happened since then. I think you'll agree.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
do you want to tell first to introduce yourself, tell the listeners about what you're up to, and maybe a bit about what's just in brief, a couple of the updates since we last spoke.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. My name is Greg Sullivan. Thank you. I'm originally from New York area of the U.S. I've been in Japan here for about a total of almost coming up on 20 years, actually. And I've done the JCETI project, which is really just focused on ET contact and disclosure. We've been going since 2010, and yeah, really once the lockdown era hit, we've had a really strong base of events, workshops, seminars, and content, published content, online content. But it all really kicked into overdrive during the last few years. So we're just so grateful for the exposure. I've been on TV several times here. So I feel like our our mission has really it continues to expand, and we've done just countless C5 events, and I've also really been going heavily into the energy work, the Ascension type of stuff in recent years. So my most my days these days my focus is really on I do a lot of personal sessions, and we work with ET guides to do a lot of deep healing and starseed support and deep clearings. A lot of people have all sorts of negative attachments um that might be of astral or fourth dimensional nature, especially in Japan, where they really just have difficulty expressing themselves, so people like really start uh cramp down and kind of push down their emotions, and that builds up this sort of like specter of weight behind them. So we help people in their everyday life, and on their own spiritual mission, clearing that stuff out. It's
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I feel like we're on the cutting edge of a lot of
Yeah.
stuff happening here. So I love my work, I love what we do, and I love being in Japan.
So, what does the day-to-day experience with JCETI, what is that like?
In the past, we localize, we put into Japanese the a lot of different I've been a liaison between CSETI and also ESETI in Washington, USA, to do books and films here. There's a very active publishing industry, but in recent years, like I said, it's shifted more from real events to a lot more online stuff, and also the personal sessions. It's something I never thought I would be doing, but I was really prompted by my teams, my guides, to really uh, use these new modalities for the benefit of like the Japanese spiritual community. So in the past, they had a really there was a bit of a delay between the recent information and what was translated. Anything that doesn't get translated to Japan in Japanese doesn't get it's almost like it doesn't exist. So there's a really big language barrier, as you can imagine. So our skills as translators and sort of like ambassadors in that sense have been really pushed to the limit. But as far as the healing and the Ascension light body sessions, I do like pretty much 5 or 6 people. I have 5 or 6 people come in a day, and we go out and we do it could be a clearing type session, a healing type session, or also working with advanced parts of the light body, like the tree of life, 12-step tree of life, and also what we call maybe the etheric rewire. And so I finding that like a lot of people have all this stuff they brought in from past experiences on Earth here, and also baggage and different things they need to work on in their contracts from other worlds, other incarnations,
Yeah.
off world rather.
Okay. Yeah. And tell us a bit more about these healing ways that you have. Is it quite a kind of therapeutic way in terms of talking, or is there a more sort of paranormal, spiritual aspect to it?
Oh, it's full on spiritual, where I'm just the navigator, and so I open up it's like a contact session in the room, indoors. So I open up a spiritual sort of portal, and then we have the teams we work with are super advanced, like the what they call like the Guardian Alliance, or the there's a lot of names for them, but in the past people might have been aware of a process called MAP, Medical Assistance Program. That's sort of similar. It was out of Virginia, a group called Paralandra, and it's sort of an extension of that going into the higher dimensions. So the guides come in, and they either bring the person's astral body into a different onto a ship or somewhere nearby that they can do that work, or they really just fill the room with their energy, and we've already done at least 2 or 3 thousand of those. So for 2 or 3 thousand people, because once they experience the clearing, that level of connection, it's sort of the next generation spiritual, I call it. It's like 5D spiritual. So that's it's sort of like we have a lot of people who've spent tens of thousands of dollars on all these other different readings and modalities, and they haven't gotten the same results. So I feel like I feel like the relationship we built over the years doing so many hundreds of CE5 events have enabled me to kind of like provide this platform for the guides to do this for the people who really need it.
Okay. And is the healing physical in times as well, in terms of physical aim?
It can be, yeah. Physical disease has energetic roots a lot of times, so for sure. At the very least, we've had people tell me, they got a mass clearing, and they were always going to a massage clinic or a sports therapy clinic, and they couldn't get rid of the tension in their neck and shoulders, and then it turned out that it was an energetic burden. And so once they had that deep clearing occur, they said they never had to go to the masseuse again. So something as simple as that, up until like avoiding the common cold, or just people just become aware of when they're being influenced by things that aren't their own. Because the Japanese people are super empathic, so they tend to take on stuff that's not their own. And there's a lot of guilt programming and shaming programming here, so it's sort of like helping to get them neutral, once again.
Yeah, the cultures are quite different to here. So you do you have a body of evidence then, if you were to speak to a hardline scientist who wanted to say that this was all nonsense? What would you present them? Would you have evidence that could really blow their mind?
I think we're still working on that for sure. I've definitely had a lot of doctors experience we've had a lot of medical people, nurses and doctors experience the sessions for sure. And also, I want to work on using like CGI or those kind of like 3D graphics to describe the type of damage that can be repaired, or the type of things that occur that we see kind of in a remote viewing sense. But at the time being, we have a lot of testimonials. But I would like to definitely get into maybe like the aura photography, or something that would show like a before and after, maybe was that the Carillion photography or something like that, to maybe get some, and also leaving some the night vision in the room to maybe get some footage of how the energy changes. It's a little bit, it's definitely non-physical, so it's hard to get some maybe hardline data, but that's something that I definitely like to get into in the future.
And I guess you've got to also battle with the people who might say that there's a placebo effect or some sort of aspect of that. But I guess until you're involved and seeing these things for real, you might not really understand how the energy changes are manifest, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's an extension of the CE5 field work, and people might have remembered that Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind film that came out right as the pandemic hit in 2020, and I had a small appearance in that, and of course there was the episode where the one of the participants had his hearing repaired. So there's I think the medical aspect of ET contact is really something that's going to be really special from here on out, and a lot of people doing C5 field work have experienced that that kind of like, even though they stayed up almost all night, they weren't tired, or just sort of like an influx of life energy, and sort of a renewed sense of gusto, or a lot of these it's an activation of the subtle bodies, So definitely we've been able to really make that into a compact program. And the last year I released this book, so my biggest update is this one. It's
Wow,
going to
yeah.
be in English hopefully in the next year or two. But
What's the title? I
I
can't
call
read that.
it's called How to Meet Your Star Family,
Oh,
the
okay.
complete navigation book.
Mhm.
And so we really, it's like an indoor contact. It's an extension of the CFI field work where I have some of the basic kind of prep techniques and cleric techniques as a warm up. And then we last year, as I was making the book, the real piece came in, and I was sort of like able to quote unquote download over a weekend the four sort of scenarios that people can use to contact with their main ET guides and their star families
Okay.
in an indoor session. So it's really it's enabling the both parties to connect on a neutral playing field, and people to create sacred space at home, so they don't have to always go as far as going outside and
Hmm.
all the things that can involve as far as the outdoor field work goes.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I
Well,
mean
update us on
that's a
how,
whole.
that's going on both the indoor and outdoor field work in Japan. I know last time we spoke, you said that people were, traveling all over the country to meet up for various things. I think the commitment within certain
Yeah,
groups was quite amazing. So tell me
yeah.
a bit more about how that's been going. Has it grown at all?
Yeah. Definitely, we've had an amazing year this year. It's really been the guides pulled out all the stops. I mean, when we do have our events, we've slimmed down the schedule a little bit as compared to past years, but this year we've gotten what was it in the late July. We had our first event out in the Noto Peninsula, which is on the Japan Sea side of not too far from a city called Kanazawa, which often gets picked up in New York Times and a lot of travel publications for its gardens, Japanese gardens.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most memorable experiences in recent years. And I was able to film over 20 minutes of the ships coming in and out
Wow.
of the Big Dipper, the cup of the Big Dipper.
Yeah.
And there was four ships that were making like a video loop. So they were coming in to view as a light ship, like as a big bright white light, and then they were slowly, delicately floating into the cup, and then disappearing again, phasing out of reality, or this visible, the visible spectrum of light, and then coming back around. So they were like in a merry-go-round,
Okay.
and so it was like just really quite intense. So and everyone there, 20, 30 people saw it and experienced it, and so several people filmed it as well, including myself. So that was a
Okay.
really kind of breakthrough moment for this year.
Have you found that when you're trying to film things, that sometimes you get some of the equipment breaking? Because I only say that because I had some success in filming when I started doing CE5 and managed to get. I've actually got a channel of my videos.
Uh,
But in more recent times, every time I get the same camera out now, it's fully charged. I go up there, I turn it on, and I get like the fuzzy lines, and then
yeah,
suddenly says battery low, and then it dies, and I'm
yeah,
like, it's fully
yes,
charged. I go home
yeah,
after, and it's fully charged again. It's clearly they're saying no to me now.
yes. I
So
know that.
I don't know if you've had experiences like that, and if sort of a bit Skinwalker Ranch in terms of experience that, but yeah,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's good to have it's a balance of like, that when they want you to have the real experience, like, and no matter what we've filmed, like there's always something that's like the cherry on top. It's meant for the whole group to experience there in real time. So I definitely know exactly what you mean. And we've had a lot of system failures and obvious times when they definitely shut the camera off, and like this is just for you guys, so can, and they're actually looking forward in time to see who and where the footage will be used,
yeah,
because in Japan, like I said, we have TV people approaching us at times, at time, and obviously that could be connected to the intelligence community in places we don't know. So there are kind of mining missions, fishing missions that occur, and so I've been very careful as to who I give what. and when it comes to the media. So like, you know,
You mean like
they'll approach,
fishing, as in like trying to get information, like
yeah,
some
they'll
sort of
approach an
yeah,
active group
yeah,
like us,
yeah.
and that saves them. Like, so we're out in the field doing all this hard work into the late hours of the night, and then they come in once a year and swoop in and try, and they always ask, what's your best experience, give us your best footage, you know. So, and then
Mm.
that's like a mining mission, you know. So
Yeah.
you have to be aware of that. So the guides are always protecting us about that. Like, so I feel that that's there's always a meaning when that happens. And you know, I in the beginning I would go out with a full bag of gear and load it up and back up batteries and everything. But
Yeah.
as I traveled more and more, you know, and did more and more events, and the I really just my gear list got smaller and smaller, believe it or not. So,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
then
No,
you know,
I
once,
think I'm in the same boat. I just want to just take my chair and my torch and
yeah, that's all you need. I feel naked without a laser in my hand, but it's
well,
become
yeah.
an extension of my being in the
There's
field.
still a few flights around. There's a guy I go with who does have his laser, and I'm always worried that he's flashing it, and there's probably a plane or something. I just feel like a bit
Yeah,
conscious of
yeah.
that. But
We
yeah, with the torch, I mean, it's just so that I don't stumble over things trying to get
stumble
out.
over. Yeah, yeah. I
Because
get you. I get you.
we
Yeah.
go in various woodland areas, which
Yeah,
can be a bit.
it's important to have that. Sometimes you have like a ditch or a small, you know, a gap in the road that people can fall. So I definitely, ever we have always ask people to break out to have their smartphone lights or the headlamps
Yeah.
ready.
And we've also kind of changed our ways a bit. We've had a number of people taking the lead and creating their own meditations and their own kind of I guess sequence of events leading up to the point, you know. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's been really good. I find that the whole CE5 thing, the whole kind of light show that you might get from whatever's out there is almost like it's an addendum to the whole thing in terms of it's just the
Yes.
experience of meeting like-minded people, having a chat, having some meditation, relaxing, just being out in nature. Sometimes there's a lot to it
Yes.
that people maybe don't recognize who are new to it, that is beneficial, even if you don't
Yeah.
see anything happen,
Yes.
which you know happens a lot. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree, and hearing you say that, Joe, reminds me that, so the what I would say is the reason why we had, you know, oftentimes the reason why the guys are able to the show give us such an amazing light show. It's because the land is so clear. So
yeah,
it turned out like that whole Noto Peninsula was just so pristine and on, so the beautiful nature and really it's like a really gentle feminine energy, like we're on the water side, we're on the seaside there on the Japan Sea, and I've always liked that area, but the land there was so welcoming and kind of just once they have that connection to depending on where you are in the Earth grid, you know, the contact kind of changes. So that
yeah,
was
yeah.
really part of it. It's like the platform for the contact to
Sure.
occur.
I mean, I think it's been since we spoke that I had probably one of my most amazing C5 experiences was at Avebury, and from
Oh
the
yeah,
very
I loved it there. I loved it there. Yeah,
yeah.
I went.
So you
We
can
went
say,
to the pub called the Green King. My
oh yeah,
friend Neil from Brighton, and I were on tour in
okay,
England from with
yeah,
my band, and we had a
okay,
great pint in Avebury.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's a special place, and actually, you mentioned that you're a guitarist as well, so a man of many talents. So tell
Yes,
us
yeah.
quickly plug
Oh,
your guitar. You said you had a
oh
song
yeah.
or something or a
Oh
new.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, my just thanks to the, you know, these recent years in the lockdown, I was able to finish my second album as my project, my musical project, recording project is called Escalade, which means
Okay.
rock climbing in French, and obviously, and of course, Cadillac then took the name from me, and it's become quite popular as that giant SUV,
Okay.
Escalade. But my first album was released in was it like it was first out in about 2010, right when we started JCETI. So that's finally been uploaded to your Spotify and all the platforms people use, Amazon Music and everything. So I'll give you the link for that. It's the
Yeah.
first album is called Odo, and it's got my UK single. That was, I was on tour at the time uh, with a buddy who lived in Japan here. So yeah, that's it's been a great outlet for me, and I know, and I've realized how much inspiration I got from my I was getting a lot of inspiration from unseen places when I wrote the songs, and and so it's been yeah, it's been great to be able to do some concerts with that this year as well. I did about 4 or 5 shows already this
Okay.
year.
So are your
Yeah.
fellow bandmates, are they equally as involved with UFOs and
No,
JCETI and stuff?
I've
No.
drawn them in slowly. Yeah, so we've done actually a couple lives with a concert in the evening, and then a field work afterwards.
Okay.
So yeah, we slowly getting them, and once they have the experience, artists and musicians have an open mind, and I do a lot of ambient music and experimental music, so people in that circle are kind of just a little bit mad anyway. So like the Brian Eno crowd, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
We had a lovely Eno exhibit in Kyoto, Japan last
Mhm.
year, ambient
Oh yeah.
Kyoto. Yeah,
Hmm.
but anyway, so yeah, so slowly, I've been able to share that with people who normally wouldn't have the experience. So it's been
Yeah,
awesome. The music combination too.
sure. Do you want to quickly turn to how the sort of I guess disclosure and how the media are picking up the all the developments going on? Do you feel like there's a shift going on in Japan, or have you sensed it? And obviously I've seen things in maybe more in America, and there seems
Yeah.
to be a shift going on globally. But I wonder what your take is on with regards to Japan.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely with what is it? The UAP hearings, the
Yeah,
congressional hearings, and obviously the Mexican government Jaime Maussan's thing that was actually picked up in Japan. So in the Japanese media has it's been a very tabloid based and ridicule based um, coverage of the UFO field for many years here. So um, although people are open to it, there's a very strict media control that really started after the war with the GHQ and McCarthy. So it's been a very when it comes to national security topics, Japan is very much under the control under U.S. kind of monitor under U.S. control. So they've been very reluctant to take any aggressive stance on topics like this. But I was surprised that that translates into the UAP, Tic Tac UFO. That stuff was translated and released here in the mass media. Definitely, that was the first bit that was done in real time, and then the all the stuff about maybe TTSA and all that stuff was completely ignored.
mhm.
And so Elizondo,
Yeah.
all that he wasn't in the media once here. And
No.
then what recently with this with the Grush hearings that was in the media here
Yeah.
very briefly. And then the Mexican government, the quote unquote ET bodies,
Yeah.
that was in real time on TV. And I did, and when those things happen, I usually do a YouTube live stream. We have about 35,000 on our channel right now. Who knows how real those numbers are, but I
Yeah.
try and keep people when something like that happens. I try and I do a live stream right away to do a commentary on it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So and what people may have seen though in the Japanese piece is that they've set up unfortunately they've set up a disinfo apparatus. They've upgraded their disinfo apparatus to. You might have seen news about this Fukushima UFO lab, which is
Hmm.
there are two. It's in a place called Eno.
Okay. Yeah, I was I mentioned before that I did briefly see something about a bunch of people talking about progress towards disclosure, I think, in Japan. And yeah, so tell me more about that.
Well, I'll just comment. First off, as an American or as a Westerner, my comment would be that as I'm looking at the developments on in the news, it's on one hand, of course, on a superficial level, it's really there are positive things in the fact that it's definitely allowing more of us to get out there and become spokespeople in the media and also become you know considered seriously for the first time ever. So and the topic being considered scientifically for the first time ever, that's really positive. But of course the narrative is always controlled, so I'm always skeptical at first. And my thing would be to that instead of having these cherry picked whistleblowers, they need to definitely refer to the legacy that's been there with Colonel Corso and I've recently been in touch with Paola Harris quite a bit. So
Okay,
she's had,
cool. Yeah.
and she's connected with obviously Stephen Greer in a disclosure project. So all the disclosure people, all the pioneers who have a lot of years behind them, definitely should be first in line to be their evidence and their testimony should be given preference, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that this year, when there is something like the Grush hearings coming out, there does seem to also be this sort of a sideline development, which just seems completely bizarre. And I know that you mentioned the Mexico hearings. My take on that, and I did share it with some people, but my take was that those ET bodies were probably not ET. They were probably human, maybe some form of, I don't know. It could have been so old that they were from a race that maybe were kind of small in size and originally, or maybe it was a deformity or something. So
it's like
I mean,
that.
I don't know for
Atacama
certain.
humanoid thing is there as well.
Yeah, but then there was also the Las Vegas shoot down, and there was all the stuff happening in Peru, and these things, they were picked up by the local tabloids in the UK at the time, and I think it's as much as I was like, oh great, now these things seem to be happening. Oh wow. When they come out on the news, I feel like they've been given the go-ahead because there is probably a aspect to it that is disinformation or created. So it's just hard to know what's really going on. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, that's an interesting. The bodies element is an interesting and angle too. I think we're going to need all. It's showing us that we're going to need proof is going to be necessary in many different formats, right? So the bodies thing is one thing with the Atacama humanoid and then of course these recent releases with in Mexico, but that's one thing, and then we have the videos and sightings like the Tic Tac UFO and which was most likely an ARV, like a man-made anti-gravity vehicle. So I mean, I think that it's I think that our experience through CE5 is going to be really a key in the coming years to help discern, because so many people don't have any of the knowledge. So I always have a filter that I pass these things through, and like you said, the things that are out there on the cutting edge in the mass media have been given the go ahead, and like they're totally cherry picked. So we should be looking behind who's behind there, and I think there's already been some research talking about the guy sitting right behind David Grush and how he was being kind of groomed. Like he was groomed not only for this experience, but he was being like kind of.
You talking about the lawyer?
Yeah.
He's recently come out. I think I haven't heard about. I think he's doing an interview at some point. Is it coming out or has it come out? I'm not sure, but yeah, it'd be interesting to hear his take on things, because I think he's probably got some some views that would be interesting to hear.
Definitely. And let me continue about that. So on the Japan side, this is really key here, Joe. Yeah. So on the Japan side, it's really unfortunate that so like the media apparatus, like they'll many people have talked about this before, but like the things that have been green lighted, the doors open and all of a sudden they've got red carpet treatment, right? So in Japan here we have a long-standing occult magazine. It's sort of like the Mad magazine of the it's like ghosts, Nessie, poltergeist phenomenon, and UFOs get lumped into that.
Sasquatch and Bigfoot. And all that.
Yeah. It's all, and it's I don't know if you've seen the Phantasmagoria. I think it's a horror magazine, horror film. Freaks magazine, and then and then there's the Mad. We always had Mad magazine in the U.S., which is like a comic. So it's like the combination of those two, and the once in a while they'll have a decent article about the Japanese Shinto shrines or like things that aren't normally known about their imperial family, or some interesting quote unquote alternative history. But a lot of it's, when it comes to UFOs, it's like nearly 100% trash. And they completely ignore us. And I've met the editor, and he's been on TV now countless times. He's now the go-to guy for the TV UFO stuff now, and in order to give him further credibility, because this magazine, of course, it has a fan base in Japan, but it also, of course, has a tarnished reputation, just as being like an entertainment rag. But now they've actually given him new credence by this collaboration, which happened with a in Fukushima, where the nuclear power meltdown was, the
Hmm.
nuclear power plant and the earthquake on 3/11.
Yeah.
And so it just happens that that same prefecture has a UFO museum. And so they sort of like docked Moo magazine with this UFO museum, and they have like they created a small line of novelty goods like pins and t-shirts,
Hmm.
and the editor of the magazine comes in once a year, and lo and behold, they have a lot of coverage in the West now. So if you Google Fukushima UFO lab, you've got at least 5 or 6, maybe even more articles that are saying Japan's a UFO hotspot, and it's JCETI is not mentioned once, and you've got now Moo here standing there, and then now he's brought in the on the mass media TV shows as the head of the UFO lab, International UFO Research Lab at
Right.
Fukushima, and he's now they brought the same exact filtering and disinfo techniques right into cover this new era of information. So the
So
people
what's
who
going on there? I
boycotted
mean,
this,
is it? Do you think it's controlled disinfo, or is it just poor journalism from people who just don't know really?
it's totally controlled, and I've heard that from him himself. He told me him
Okay.
himself. So
Mhm.
it's and basically so it's like the people who totally refuse to publish disclosure, they've now pulled a 180, and now they're the ones who are going to tell you about disclosure, the controlled
Mm.
disclosure, so
Well,
the
that's
fake
it. I
disclosure.
mean, years ago it was dismissal, and now it's probably trying to control the narrative, isn't it? And
Yes, that's totally it.
um,
Yeah, so I almost I've been tempted to mail him. He emails me once a year after the New Year to say, hey, if you have any information for our magazine, send it over. But I want to tell him, like, look, you need to step away and start sending us these media experience media
yeah,
contacts, because you're not an expert. He's just regurgitating the same old BS that's been used on the tabloid shows here for years. So that's really just disheartening and disappointing.
does
um
he see himself as a disinformation person, or does he kind of just do his thing and hasn't really
he's
got a
out
view?
there flashing Mason signery, Joe.
Okay.
These people are Dark Lodge Masons. They're
Okay.
on
Right.
the disinformation train, and they're
It's
like, I
incredible,
call
isn't
them
it?
the Japan DS. They're CIA
Yeah.
Japan, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But he's on the gravy train. It's out there. It's out there for anyone to look at if you have any occult literacy. So that's the kind of stuff that as soon as we start talking about that, boom, the censorship comes down, and our YouTube stream starts getting screwed with. And so
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
be putting all this in my large expose. I have a book that's been 2 years in the making. It's going to be the entire coverage. It's going to be in Japanese first, but it's going to be the entire coverage of all the trouble and all the harassment and interference we experienced with the media here.
Right.
Um, I won't really take a serious shot at this guy in particular, because you know why? He told me face to face when we went in person that they're under this the U.S. control. He put it out flat. He put it to me straight point blank. So I respect that. A lot of the other people never would do that. So um,
Yeah.
when I do criticize them, I try and do it as nicely as I can. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's just it's he didn't start the fire. It's not a problem that he started, but he's being used as a tool
yeah.
for a very dangerous rollout of this issue.
Yeah. I wonder if there are any uh craft in Japan in bases and things.
Yeah, I know that's been touched on. Yeah, there's definitely portals here, and so switching gears, um I think there's definitely inner earth portals here in Japan, and uh I think as far as the disclosure stuff goes, and the kind of like advanced technology projects, I think that from what I've gathered from the long time we've been here is that first off, you're never going to have a Japanese whistleblower, because they're very they're so compartmentalized, and they're so top down pyramid structure here that it would be like suicide to break rank like that. And so the witnesses we've had, and I was on the History Channel with one of them um uh in Ancient Aliens. So Mr. Sato, he's as you might know, Asians respect their elders. So once he's like in his 80s now, or late 70s, and so after he's retired and gotten to this very distinguished position, he can come out and then represent the younger folks and younger people and be like a doorway to them. That's the way they do it here. And
Yeah.
so it's, yeah, as far as that goes. So and there are a couple. There's an Echelon facility in northern Japan, and of course, there's like NSA listening stations there, and of course where we have access to the American military has a strong presence here, as you can imagine. But as far as the man-made stuff and all that super secret technology, I'm not too sure how much that is. How much, I wouldn't say there's a ton of it, if any at all. So as far as that, but as far as ET stuff goes, there's the inner Earth entrances and definitely the power spots. I know you had mentioned that you heard someone talking about the ancient uh places that Christ had maybe visited here,
Oh,
and
yeah,
there's
that was
theories. Yeah,
so that was one of my last interviews was with a guy, and he talked about this. So he had met a guy, what's his name? Talking about the theory of prophecy. Demarque was the
uh-huh,
guy,
yeah,
and yeah, he was talking about. So he had heard through the prophecy about this place in Japan where apparently Jesus was buried.
yeah,
And the guy didn't know about this place, only heard about it through his I guess experiences with these ETs.
yeah.
But I was yeah, we were talking about this, and you think you mentioned you might have been to this. I think it's in Shingo or somewhere. There's a place that reportedly is where Jesus may have been buried. I mean, it's a crazy thought to some people, but
Yeah, I think some people say it's one of the places that he visited. Well, the big thing is like, the Yeshua, the original Christ, historical Christ was said to have like studied in India, and then in the lost years, the unrecorded years,
yeah,
many people say he traveled to Asia and as far as into Japan. So there's like two sites I know of. One is in Aomori, which is at the very top, very north of the main island of Japan, and there's a lot of that's chock full of mystery spots and sort of ancient history. And
mm,
so the information first came out of the it's sort of like a record called the Takeuchi Monjo, which is a sort of like ancient history record that was discovered in Japan, that has a lot of like pre-emperor and pre-imperial history. And so this site is a Japanese shrine, but it's got a lot of this Christian uh, uh, overtones to it. And so they have a display in the main building about a lot of this information as to that was on the pilgrimage path of Christ and everything. The
yeah,
other spot is in Fukushima. I'm sorry, it's a Fukuyama, which is in Hiroshima Prefecture, Western Japan.
mhm.
And so those are the two that most people reference to, as far as the spots that Christ either visited or potentially something, a relic was buried.
Yeah,
I wouldn't personally say go as far as to say as it was him himself. But those are the type of things that like I think we would definitely, the ETs are confirming for us. Like a lot of the ancient history is getting confirmed thanks to ET contact. So I've done some dowsing and readings on that,
yeah.
and uncovered some interesting things.
And it's hard to explain how these things would exist and their history if it wasn't for some aspect of the truth in this story or whatever this narrative. I mean, I have no idea what really happened, but
Yeah.
ultimately, if you kind of see it as a hoax or you're a naysayer, how do you explain that? Why would people in these certain places in Japan want to have built shrines towards anything Christian? It's so far away, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's definitely strange. I mean, there's definitely a ley line grid, and it's a lot, talking about the way the shrines were placed around the island. There was a lot of very ancient knowledge being used, like the feng shui, and also literally not like something like the Nazca lines. Like they had knowledge of a greater, more of a macro scale of
Yeah.
the
And I
whole
think there's pyramids
archipelago.
as
So
well. There's many pyramids in
yeah, a
Japan as
lot of
well.
pyramids there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one spot I just mentioned in Fukuyama City is actually a pyramid. So
Mhm.
There's several pyramid
And
structures
what
across
style
Japan.
are they? Are they a bit more like the kind of the Mesoamerican ones, or more like the Egyptian?
Good question. I think they're more Egyptian types.
Okay.
So yeah, there's like at least ones that you can see that are totally still quite visible as a mountain in that shape with a low about maybe a height of about 400 to 800 meters is I know of at least 10 or 15,
Mm.
including that one in Fukuyama there.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, turning it a bit to the media, I want to know, actually, I think last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about Q, and it was a bit of a sort of a diversion there. And I've sort of diverted it to it now
It was
because
yeah.
it's not often I get to talk about that whole thing with guests, because not so many I was aware of it, but I think at the time we were both following it or seeing it, and whatever Q was, or what if it might be in terms of the future, it's a fascinating part of the whole story of certainly
Yeah.
during the whole kind of, the Trump era, and the election, and all the fight that's been going on, certainly sort of blew up around 2020 onwards. So
Yeah.
yeah, give me a bit of your take on maybe what you think Q is, like the whole Q, and people say QAnon, but I'm just going to call it Q because I think Q was
Yeah.
something different to QAnon. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's people have seen you may have seen I agree. I wasn't definitely fully on board with all of that, but the CNN article was released there was a couple articles that you might have seen that talked about how the biggest following of this social the biggest following of all that stuff was, besides the US, was in Japan.
Hmm.
And so there was a large Twitter account from this young girl called something Airy, her name was, and so I wasn't really looking at that because I find that like it really a lot of new people who came on board with the information were quickly swept up into the frenzy of the whole election and everything. Um, and of course that brought up a lot of very hot topics, a lot of trigger words, and a lot of things that were like psychologically programmed to either awaken people or divide people. So I think it was a necessary phenomenon, but I'm very wary of like predictions, and a lot of the techniques that started being employed seem to be very high risk, you might say, at the very least. So as far as the way my stance and the way I like to do my research and my conduct our activities here, I wouldn't say I was like a fully on board with a lot of that. But that being said, during the what was it 2021, we were involved with the release of Dr. Greer's unacknowledged book. We
Hmm.
had already done the DVD in what was it 2018 or not 2019, so we had the DVD under our kind of jurisdiction. And the book was released because it was released by, I think it was Tuttle. The major publishers here were able to make bids on it, and so that's a long story. But I was able to kind of be a liaison in that process. And in the long story short, uh, again, when we don't do things ourselves, there's always some sort of problem that happens. And um, the book release occurred with where we were invited to do like it was a once in a lifetime thing where YouTube really hit hard in the pandemic here. So we were asked to pair with a couple of these major Q type YouTubers, and really in Japan, unfortunately, a couple of these people just were full out fraud. They were talking about that they were in meetings with Trump on a weekly basis, and just absolutely completely unbased claims. And the Japanese, unfortunately, are very naive and pure hearted. So, and then I think, Joe, the one technique they used here was they really inflated the views. So, people, as we all are programmed to think, like the bigger the better, the more the better. So they had a lot of like, people come out of nowhere with these gigantic channels that we're either buying views and subscribers or being
Hmm.
kind of angel invested from
Yeah,
unseen
I probably
places
picked
with.
up on some of those. I mean, I can name certain people that seem to have just, they came, were big, and then suddenly just disappeared. And
Yeah.
it makes you
Yeah.
wonder how that happens.
Yes. And so I was getting a lot of inspiration or insight from the guide. So anyway, the publisher, it's a long, I won't go into the whole thing, but and long story short, we did the 2 events, and they were fun and great. And the unacknowledged book was shared. It was it got way more reach than any other of these kind of publications would, thanks to the YouTube guys. But then next thing you know, it comes to February of 2022, 2 months after the last event we did, which was like December 28th of 21. And this guy gets arrested in Japan for one of the 2 guys we collaborated with in this event. He gets arrested, and the article goes to CNN America.
Okay.
Can you believe this? And he gets arrested for squatting at a vaccine clinic. Like, he brings his following in, and he told us, like, in December, oh, yeah, I'm going to start doing anti-vax demos and like marches in Japan. So they got this. He had a large online community, and every time he'd say, okay, the next demonstration is in Hiroshima on in on next weekend, on next Saturday, and suddenly 200 people would show up, and then the police would be notified, and so they were marked. And then next thing you know, like, they interfered with a public vaccination clinic in near Tokyo Stadium, and they were, a couple of them refused to leave, and they were arrested. So that's when the red flags just, I already had a couple red flags in hand, and that's when I started waving them like, this is completely dangerous. And that article, that incident was actually released in an American CNN. Can you believe that?
Right.
So it's like a what you might call a blowback episode, and it's trying to put stains on. I think they're really trying to screw with the researchers, the veterans like us in the field, like, and really kind of like it's what they call otoshiana in Japan, where it's like it's like a trap. It's a booby trap. It's a booby trap. And so and then it's like, I immediately contacted the publisher and asked them to scrub, like, take down all the stuff that was online. Any pictures of us together, were deleted, and all the links and tags I completely deleted, like, because we had made it a special agreement that none of that stuff was going to happen. And this was like the absolute worst case, like number one worst thing that could ever happens here. It's
Right.
like a collaborator. The publishers like to group their releases together.
Right.
It's for the for their, that's something they do for promotions.
Yeah.
But it's like when you see a panel, you imagine all these people, and in a UFO event, you imagine if you see 10 people on a panel, they've got to be friends, right? And
Yeah.
that's just a complete illusion, right? So they do a lot of this what they call what insho so it's like it's a smoke and mirrors games, with the viewers and the readers. So once that arrest occurred, I was out. I was completely out, and I refused to do a publication collaboration with them. They asked me to become. They asked me to do a book with the other guy who didn't get arrested, and I was done, completely out. Forget it. I was like, my doubts had been confirmed at that point. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
that's really my real blowback experience with the Q crowd. Um,
Sure.
yeah, I
Yeah.
find
I
that
mean, I don't know. I mean, it's it's hard to say because in the time I was, probably quite um engaged with it. But now looking back, various things have happened, and you just wonder what was it all about. I mean, was it a force for good, or was it some sort of internal psyop for generating more, I guess, polarization and sort of kind of, yeah, creating a negative atmosphere. It was
yeah.
an interesting time,
Well,
nonetheless.
let's continue on this. This is really important though, because it really I think it was sad to see how it divided the C5 community even, and it really was like kind of showed people, a lot of people showed how much they really understood it and had integrated about this sort of information. And so there were a lot of what I just mentioned was sort of like maybe a dark side element of it, but um it was like a litmus test as well. It's like, how much have you really accepted the ET disclosure is like the highest level of all this, but have you accepted what leads up to that? With the a lot of that stuff, a lot of the ideas were taken from real research. And the first thing I tell a Q person who's going on and on about the children and stuff was like, do you know who Ted Gunderson is?
Mhm.
Look up Ted Gunderson, because that's who he's now passed, but he was the ex FBI head who after he retired went on the child trafficking. He's the pioneer. So people they don't understand that this was Frankenstein. The Q philosophy was Frankenstein from a lot of just research that was already out there, and kind of synthesized together in this really certain specific way. But I use the word conspiracy because we were the information, like the Dr. Greer stuff and a lot of the other stuff I've used as reference here in Japan. I think it was the original conspiracy, conspiritual information, where it's one foot's in the spiritual territory, but one foot is also in the hardcore black ops. I wouldn't call it conspiracy, but reality, the alternative reality,
Yeah,
what's really going behind the curtain, right? So
yeah,
I like the word conspiritual, and I use that in my lectures as that cute thing was going on, to say this is an important watershed moment, and this is what we've always been like. That someone finally created a word to describe what I've been always doing. I was the person who connected that kind of information to the spiritual side. There was never a lot of discourse between the two.
yeah. I mean, whatever Q was, as I said, I think it did seem to spur a lot of change in the minds of people towards this kind of more alternative area, and brought the fringe into the mainstream. And I think it played a
Yeah,
role there, regardless of
definitely did. Yeah.
who it was. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I think that
in so many
there was
ways.
a lot of I think I would appreciate if no, so, but I think on the backside that it's hard to we on when you take it a step further, the dangerous parts of it is that um while we have this great window of opportunity for awakening with this like ascension cycle, that people's attention was being drawn not from higher consciousness, but it's being drawn down into the most chaotic and convoluted thing, like a U.S. election. It's like into politics. So it's like
The divide,
and and
and there still
and
is a strong,
very very tricky
strong
there.
divide. I mean, it's incredible, and it's exciting to think there's going to be another election next year, and it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see what happens, because
And
I saw the midterms happen. There's actually stuff coming up with Sidney Powell right now. There's
speak.
people getting absolutely derided for being election deniers. And
Yeah.
there's the
Well.
whole J6 thing as well, and I think there was pro-Palestinian protesters that stormed the White House recently, and that's not over the
Yeah.
news. There's no the same rhetoric against the J6 protests as there is against
Yeah.
these ones, and
Yeah. I
there's two sides to every story, isn't there?
Yes, I see the dangers in both. See that when they control the narrative, they have both sides, and they slam both together, and then so they're always pulling strings on both sides, and so uh again, it's like to discredit the actual research, and it's to discredit the actual awakening, like where it's like they're what they're actually, the techniques they're actually using, they're always trying to shut down any discourse about them, right? So
Yeah,
um and then the agent provocateur with the J6 thing, and those are all really key things. The other part of it is you know the messianic figure, like I think that no one presidential candidate could ever take on that system on their own. So who is actually behind Trump has been very reluctant to own any of that, and I think that's unfortunate. I think if he was really for the real hardcore Q fans out there, I think they deserve a little more of a something, right?
yeah,
Not just all these very, because all these like platitudes are just the really mystic and cryptic
yeah.
comments, and
I mean,
they're
it was
trying their
very
best to read into everything.
it was there's definitely an element of people showing, look, he's definitely with Q with all these pictures, but then was he? I mean,
Yeah, it's a self hypnosis. It's like a self hypnosis thing, and
yeah,
there's always the next thing to expect or to look forward to.
yeah.
I just was about to say something, and lost my train of thought. But yeah, the reason why our channel got our first shadow ban experience with YouTube in Japan here, we shot up from like a few thousand. We've had our channel for several years, but YouTube actually finally kicked in 2020 in Japan. That's how far behind they were.
Okay.
And we had a couple of major influencers recommend me, and then suddenly we were at like 30K in no time. But what stopped the expansion was that I did a prediction about the election, and I was right.
Okay.
And the prediction was that Biden was gonna. My analysis of it at the time was a little bit rushed, and I regret some of that. But I got a major blowback because it was like too avant-garde. I've been doing avant-garde since my teens. That's what one of my soul essences is. But they weren't ready to hear it yet. And what I predicted, my message, did a reading with the guides, and they said, for better or for worse, Biden is going to be the next president. And I got that 6 months before the election. And then the part that came in after that was that they said that needs to happen because the quote unquote right has woken up now that we need to do the left, they said.
Yeah, okay.
And that's happened, right? And look at Robert Kennedy and look at
Well,
Robert
yeah,
Kennedy
I was
Jr.
actually
It's
just thinking
happening
about
now.
him now. I mean, he's
Yeah.
starting to, I guess he's playing a funny game. He went Democrat, now he's gone independent, but he's actually starting to put together sort of more left wing policies in his. So he's sort of like he's like a net, isn't he? He's trying to drag them over, and then
Yeah, it's great. I
slowly.
mean, it's great.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then you've got that.
We need.
Have you seen that Vivek Ramaswamy? And
Yes.
I mean, he seems really, really good.
Yeah. Very well spoken.
Yeah, very well spoken. But I just don't know where that's going to go though, because I just can't see the Trump base going for him unless Trump goes behind him.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and he needs that really. If he could be a VP or he could have some role to play in the future, sure. But to be president, he's got to get the Trump backing if Trump doesn't, go himself. But who knows what's going to happen. But I don't know who the left's going to go with. I think maybe Newsom. I don't know, or Biden again.
Yeah.
But gosh,
yeah. Well, the message, like I said there, the ending of this reading was so spot on, and I really harped on it during that when the Afghanistan pulled out. So it's saying like the left was screaming for anyone but Trump, right, at the time of the election, and so they got anyone but Trump in the form of like Slow Joe here, and look what happened when when Afghanistan pullout happened, the Afghanistan fiasco, right? That's when I said, look, this is real, like look what you got. This is the wake up call for the left now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how anyone still has any form of support given all the things that are going on. It's not just the economy, the Bidenomics, what they call it.
Yeah.
and the craziness that's going on, the border, and all the people coming in and causing issues there, and all these left-wing cities that seem to have various issues with drugs and homelessness, and but people are still hanging on to the idea anyone but Trump, it's I
think it's gotten looser though. I think it's definitely loosened up, and they've had people might not say it out loud, but it's like even the liberal media is really kind of dropping. They're pulling away from Biden from what it seems like.
Yeah, and someone who kind of in amongst that period, I was probably I was quite pro-Trump in a way, but now that I've seen more kind of a pull from the, as you say, the left are coming more towards my side of thinking. I've become more towards their side of thinking and starting to become a bit more left-wing again in a way. I mean, I think I probably am quite left-wing in my thinking. It's weird because if you talk to people, talk to what they call the MAGA extremists, and they talk to them, they probably represent this far left of like the 70s, the hippie movement in a way, in terms of
it was
anti-establishment. It was a complete swap.
It was 180. It was a phase switch. That was so that was really interesting. And then with Tucker Carlson being dropped from Fox, Fox used to be when I first left the U.S. They were the Gulf War advocates. They were all pro Bush, and so Fox was horrible back in the day. And now they pulled a full flip, and it's like they had all the stance of Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, and that was the closest you would get to like people who understood conspiracy, and they were really they were hitting the nail on the head with their commentary. Yeah, I
It is
like to follow.
fascinating, isn't it? But
Yeah,
it
I
does
mean,
show
it's
how how both sides are maybe controlled, and all we're doing is just yeah, being pulled back and forth and just
we have to go
kept
beyond the
divided.
duality. That's the thing. Yeah. So once you get into that higher dimensional consciousness, this is like so key. You really see like how the Machiavellian dialect, both sides are controlled, and that once you have to like pull away from that polarity and see and then it becomes like it's just a frequency game. So that's what I was saying. Like,
Mm,
why focus on this noise? Like that's never gonna really we can't solve the consciousness problem from the from that on that level. It's just too chaotic, and it's like the old world. It's the dying system. Why put your center of being in that? It's the most dangerous thing we could do. So
mhm,
we have this like enormous energy window opening, and contact is getting easier and easier, and the veils are lifting, and we're being directed to looking in the rear view mirror. That's the trick.
mhm,
It's a psyop. It's a trick. So
yeah,
um I kind of I look at that what's happening on the 3D plane as important, but it's also like one step in the past. So like as we're able to create reality and our kind of 5D mind, all these new skills come online. We're the creator. We're able to write the timeline now.
mhm,
So what we focus on is so important, and what we dedicate our focus is our life force, our energy. So it's actually this really kind of crazy form of parasitism where as you get sucked into those dramas, it's also taking a bit of your energy away.
yeah, yeah. And
So
talking about that, the push and pull. Um, I know that I think since we spoke, there's been this whole kind of the whole Russia-Ukraine war going on.
yeah,
And I know that there's been some horrific events going on now in Israel and Gaza and everything going
yeah,
on.
that
But I
that was
wondered
just
if you noticed that something that something I noticed that when so in America they've been plowing billions and billions into Ukraine and all that
yeah,
going on, and when McCarthy finally got ousted as Speaker, and it turned
yeah,
out that Pelosi was still in the Speaker's office, which is another thing.
yeah, yeah,
Suddenly,
horrible.
the threat of losing that kind of money to you, or a constant stream of money to Ukraine, became apparent to Congress, to the deep state, if you want to call it, to
Yeah,
what the powers that be behind all
yeah,
that. And suddenly, within a matter of days, suddenly there's this whole out of nowhere this whole eruption in Israel and Gaza. And now that's the new thing that everyone's talking about. And
yeah,
Russia,
yeah.
Ukraine's almost
New
forgotten about.
destruction. Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and also I heard that they'd been given the tip off from Egypt and their intelligence in terms of what was
yes.
happening. So I
Another
just
9/11, right?
yeah, I wonder what's really going on. Did Israel Mossad allow the Hamas attack to happen to give them the reason to go
Very possible.
and go into Gaza?
Yeah,
It's
I think it's very possible. Yeah,
yeah,
it's very highly likely. It's but there's always some other agenda, and I think it's got nothing to do with that's got nothing to do with religion or land this time. It's a part of this like kind of the final countdown. The sort of like the all the veils are lifting, all the masks are dropping. So
mm,
you know there's always some other ulterior motive and
yeah.
agenda occurring.
Well,
I was really hit though. We had two things happen. First is one of our collaborators and friends was there when it started. He had a group of like 20 Japanese. A Japanese
wow,
friend
where
of
was he?
ours who has a
In
large
Israel.
community. They were in Tel Aviv when the
Okay.
fight
Yeah.
it started 2 days after they landed,
Hmm.
and so they were
Wow.
among the 50 or so Japanese nationals stranded. They just got home like 3 days ago.
Wow. Okay.
So that was pretty hairy. And
So, and
then
what's their take? I mean, they must
I
have like
haven't,
an
but
inside view, maybe.
I haven't yet to talk to him, but yeah, he didn't put too much on it on social media, but I'll be talking to him this week about it.
Interesting. Yeah.
He's more on the on the pro-Israel tip, I think, to be honest, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I think on a spiritual level, it was a really like I think humanity it was really emotionally, it was more emotionally charged than the Ukraine war for sure. And it was I was like, I got hit with a serious depression, or like, it was like, once that started, I was like psychologically, I took a gut punch, it was like an empath. I was like really feeling really blue, and just unmotivated for 2 days or two or
Oh
three
God,
days there.
it was horrendous, the stories coming out of there. But one
Yeah, just
aspect to it is that how much evidence do we have of the stories? I mean, the babies thing was come out.
yeah.
They walked about that, so you wonder how much is
Yeah,
propaganda versus truth there. But
yes,
there's certainly a lot
I
of horrific stuff going on.
I did see, Joe, I was looking at one of the videos from that music festival, and my first impression, I do a lot of video. I'm on sound engineer, and I
Mhm.
do a lot of video editing. I think I was seeing strange artifacts like this, like the background.
Oh,
Look at
okay.
me right here.
Hmm.
One of the video with the two people being kidnapped.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
was kind of strange, kind of odd depth of
Hmm.
field. A little bit. That was a little bit of a strange silhouette around the people in there, back screen, green screen type of
Hmm.
artifacts.
Yeah,
Very possible.
yeah,
I wouldn't say I think I wouldn't say how much of that was, but there is at least some of it, I think. Yeah.
yeah.
And they can do it
That's
so easily. They
yeah.
can do it easily.
Well, it is easy, and getting harder and harder to really discern what's going on. I mean, I wanted to actually touch on AI. Maybe this is a good time to talk about, how what's happening in the world with regard
Yeah.
to AI deep fakes and all that, and
Yeah.
where you see that being an influence, and especially with regards to media and understanding the truth, and maybe even UFOs and the like.
Yeah, very good question. I just noticed, what was it? Yesterday I was on I was using a technical platform that had a support network, and I noticed that it's even Zoom now. It said AI assistant is engaged, it'll ask you to click yes or whatever. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
and it's getting scary. On a recent trip back to the US, I left the airport, and we were boarding the plane to go to back to Japan, and police were standing at the start of the causeway, and right as we passed out of the airport onto the the what is that, the causeway that connects to the plane, and
Hmm.
they're taking all of our pictures, and it's like, and they were kind of like, they had been called in, it seemed like in a rush, because there was some sort of like staff shortage, but um and so like this whole facial recognition,
Yeah.
now the Osaka metro has a facial recognition being tested
Yeah.
and implemented for the subway gates.
I,
It's
I, I,
getting
I get I
in.
get a sense that Japan's probably going to be ahead of the curve with all this, and I think they've got a very big robotics industry as well, haven't they? So,
Yeah. Yes.
I imagine you might be seeing like AI robots when you're buying
Yeah.
tickets at stations. Surely that must be a thing that
Yeah,
might be
that
coming in.
they're closing down the manned, the Japanese service right now. There's robots in the family restaurants. I was put it on social media. The world's best service industry is falling apart in front of our eyes. That's what I put out on
Right.
SNS, because
Yeah.
the younger generation is like, it's like they haven't been trained properly, and they literally, that's what it is. The world's, and you go into a family restaurant, and they won't even say hello at the register. They'll look at you like, and they're becoming robots too. It's like, now they've got robots in the Denny's or the fast food places here, giving you the robots bring the food out from the kitchen, and then everything's on a tablet, and they don't tell you how to use the tablet. It's like, so, just order by the tablet, bye, and they walk away from the table. It's like, so obviously there's, it depends on the restaurant, but especially the chains are like, out of nowhere they've implemented all this AI technology, and it's like, um there's no humanity with it. There's no follow up with it. It's like
Yeah.
that the
What's
staff
the
gets
buy-in like
lax.
from the general
What's that?
public? Are people buying it? Are they enjoying it? Are they looking forward to it? Or
Considering how big the elderly population is here, I think I wouldn't say they're taking it on with a smile, but it's sort of like, again, it's like, after the lockdown they kind of cleared the decks, so a lot of this stuff is just like being implemented. A lot of the stuff is being implemented with no public debate, or
yeah, no,
so
that's
it's
the
like,
scary thing. And I
it's
think
scary. So
yeah, yeah. I imagine there's
Zero
also
public
that kind of
debate.
like self-help robots for the elderly. I imagine that's probably something that's in the in the pipeline. But
Yeah.
there's I don't know. You can probably think of maybe a Black Mirror
So,
episode of how the I saw one recently about the a robot company. No, I think it wasn't Black Mirror, but it was an episode and a film or something, and it was about a robot that protects one person in that the owner, but then another person comes in, starts to threaten like the ownership, or the robot feels threatened by this person coming into this person's life, so they kill that person, bury him,
right.
and it's really dark, but
Yeah, yeah,
because the robot, their programming is to protect
yeah.
their owner. It's the
Wow.
whole thing, about
Yikes.
what's our
Yeah,
future going to look like, yeah.
I know. It's so there's got to be a lot more public discourse about this, and checks and balances and overrides, and yeah, they really program it hardcore in the media too. Like they said, like they always say it's for safety, for safety reasons. That
Mm.
they're like making this crazy logic. What was it, the with the Google Nest and those kind of things, like the
Yeah.
that's something that the quote unquote conspiracy theories always used to say. But even people who never touched that, even spiritual leaders and people I know who don't touch any of that dark stuff at all, say to me, like, hey Greg, did you ever notice I never talked to them about it. They said, did you ever notice how like YouTube seems like it's listening, and then suddenly you mention a word that you never really used before, and then suddenly videos are popping up on your feed, and it's like, yeah, that's exactly what happens. The phone is always in listen mode. And um they did a thing on TV, like with the news, where a crime was solved because the Google Nest was listening all the time, and it just so happened that um the the
Oh, is it
the
like
phone call that
Minority
came
Report
in.
level stuff?
What's that?
Minority Report level, sort of like
I think so, yeah.
premonition of.
Like it was, yeah, like they what was it, like the because the thanks to the AI device that was in listen mode, they were able to get into the data and discover this person's voice and track them down. Like it was a criminal. There's criminal, law enforcement benefits to this, and
Okay.
so like there's, out of one case out of millions of privacy invasions, they're trying to make it seem like it's worth it. It's
Wow. Yeah.
insanity.
Exactly. And there's going to be mistakes as well, isn't there? When if this becomes a thing in terms of catching people based on
So
AI algorithms, it's not going to
yeah. So
foolproof.
I think we can ask the guides to do like AI shielding, and that's part of the clearing. Like that's completely a complete invasion of privacy and violation of free will. So we can ask the guides to come in and shield as much as they can from AI and like that kind of surveillance,
Yeah.
and try and do an override of some sort, an energetic override.
So, talking about AI in the future, what's your thoughts of how things are going to be sort of playing out if you were to, look at your crystal ball in terms of, and I mention it because I think Bashar, I mentioned to you before this that I'd listened to a couple of interviews with him, and I know you said you've been following Bashar a while, or Dawalanko and
Yeah.
his links to channeling to Bashar, whatever you think
Yeah.
about channeling, and he predicts that 26, 27, we're going to get some sort of actual contact event globally that will be interesting. I
Mhm.
wonder if you've heard about that as well.
Yeah, I know that obviously that the Bashar phenomena has been very popular here, much more, actually more than the US even. So we're very aware of that. And I translated for Daryl 2 years ago at another event.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think they've done great work up until now. I think I wouldn't say, I'm not so sure how I feel about, like, I welcome predictions, but again, they can become self-fulfilling prophecies. So um I think that in the end, the problem I have with that statement, and people here who follow Bashar then pick it up and they throw it at me, and they say like, hey, 2025 is going to be open contact, right? And then I said no, and no, I'm not on board with that at all. It depends on our C5 work is what's going to be key, and if you're waiting for a prediction to occur, then you're giving your power away. So we need to get up off the armchair and get out and do some sort of contact, or some sort of, we need to be the catalyst. That is what my response is.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Nothing
I
comes
think that
nothing comes for free, but given
It-
given the developments I've seen in just the last few years, and certainly if you were to look at how things have changed since 2017 and the Tic Tac incident, which kind of was maybe a seed point, you can probably look at 26, 27 as a potential. I don't shy away from the idea. I feel energetically it feels like it could work out in terms of just if you see
yeah,
the same level of
I,
development over the next
I
few
wouldn't.
years.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah, my point of that is like just looking at the Japanese people reaction. I don't know how it is in the U.S., but as far as the people here, when they hear that, it becomes like it's like they get complacent. So it's like I definitely not to say that that's not going to happen, but what we need to, I think I'm more of an active role where it's like let's make it happen then,
Yeah.
and if it is, I would love. I don't know. I didn't see the video yet, but I would love Bashar to be, if he's going to make a statement like that, be more detailed, and be a little bit more. I mean, let's get some more information. If you're going to make a statement that like that, I think they need to be a little more
Yeah.
informative.
Yeah, well, he's made predictions before, and I think he has been on the nail,
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head with a few of these things. But as with all predictions, it's all it's kind of like a reading of the energy of now and what's the probabilistic kind of like timeline towards that. Feels quite high probability, but doesn't necessarily mean it's for real going to happen. I
Uh,
think
yeah.
um
Uh, I
but
would have to say, in all honesty, I know one of their staff who has stepped away because of the pro-vax stuff. Uh, she wants to keep her information very confidential. But the politics in that community were very seem to be very compromised. Like mask up and vax up was their modus operandi, and
yeah,
she like
yeah,
fled. She fled after that, and it was like
sure. Well, no, it
I
is
told her
interesting
she
though.
should put that out in her book here, but uh
What I do find interesting is within this community, within the UFO community, there is the whole breadth of opinions within the polarized field that we've talked about is all there. You know, it's not there's
yeah,
not
so,
there's not a definite one side to it, and that maybe that's a good thing. And I think also it's very good that it's a partisan issue in America. I feel like both sides have an equal say. I mean, I've listening to a lot of Chris Cuomo on
oh
and
yeah,
his
okay. He went,
and I
has
didn't
he gotten
realize
over his
how he's quite involved with it. I didn't realize for a few years. Yet when it came to like the whole Trump saga and everything, I couldn't stand him. But when it
yeah,
comes
yeah,
down to
yeah,
his chats on UFO topic, I'm quite intrigued by his interests. So it is
yeah.
fascinating how you can't really predict it. How some people you think, "Well, okay, wow, you're actually
Yeah, yeah.
interested, and then some
There's a
people,
shift. There's going to be a shifting of members. So I
yeah,
think Bashar is. I think he's done as far as channeling goes, and it's like I said, it's huge here in Japan. Japan is their number one audience, and uh I think they've done. I think they've done really good work. And the important thing of that Bashar has done in the past is that he connected what I call he was really one of the sort of pillars of what could be called spiritual contact. I mean, it is sort of new age, and you get into like Abraham, and then you're into and then you slip into the secret, and that's sort of like
mm,
manifestation and the law of attraction and all that stuff. It's all kind of mixed together, but
yeah,
he was a representative that could be uh Bashar, his on a positive note, he was a representative of what you might call spiritual and positive ET contact.
yeah,
And as far as like connecting the idea of UFOs and ETs with um spiritual development and
yeah.
positive
No,
energy,
I
that's a
100%
great thing.
agree. Yeah,
But then as time goes on, the prophecies become like it's an extension of their contract where um a true spiritual leader knows when their time is up. And I think honestly the Bashar Empire is sort of like past its expiry date, to be quite
well,
blunt.
okay.
And I
Well,
know if you want to
he's had
go,
a few interviews with Daryl Anka, and then he has talked in a way that sort of
he
says,
said
"Look,
he's gonna be
listen, if you
done.
don't believe me as a channeler, that's fine, but I have messages, and the messages are positive ones, and they help." And I'd agree
Yeah.
with that. I mean, if people listen to him and think, "Oh, he's a charlatan," but if they at least take away the messages, because some of them are quite empowering, and I see it from other angles, other people as well, in terms of
I want to
talking about the positivity and how you can
yeah.
create what you want in your life.
Yeah. It's still 101, honestly, Joe. I mean,
Mm.
I'll get you let's check out everyone should check out Lisa Renee, my Syrian sister. Lisa Renee. I mean, there are Ascension bloggers and people who are way beyond that, and that's just like Bashar is like preschool level. I mean, it's just ridiculous. That's Lisa, please look up energeticsynthesis.com.
Yeah.
That's conspiritual. Bashar is PG into PG, and we're on rated X. You know, we want to get into rated X. And that's how that's the advanced. I'm looking at the really advanced stuff. And so as a closing, I'll just mention that
Sure, yeah.
we were missioned, we were prospected to go into well, speaking of which, I was translating for Bashar, and he didn't recognize who I was. So he didn't know he was speaking to one of the most active contact workers on the planet.
Okay.
He had no idea. You know, I walked over to say hello, and he asked me, like, before I could even say my name, he was like, "Can you speak Japanese?" And I then I was translating, and Bashar is in there, and he didn't pick up on the fact. He picked up on the fact that there was a couple other members of the panel who were related to SSANI, but he didn't catch the fact that I had brought disclosure to Japan and was like this major figure here. He had no idea. So
Yeah.
that was a question mark in my mind.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
anyway, that being said, so my last update is one of the most intense ones. Is that it was sort of hard to believe how deep it got, but for the past year and a half, we were tasked to be in what we might call a negative portal, or us doing some serious like grid repair in an area around Kobe, Japan, which as you know, experienced a major earthquake in '95.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it was also firebombed about as heavy as Tokyo was. Like, Nagasaki and Hiroshima was the atomic bomb, but then Tokyo was totally destroyed with the several days of like mass bombings,
Yeah.
the Great Fire of Tokyo. And then Kobe was hit in the same way. So um, we had like an astral portal in our house open. So everything looked like hunky dory. And it was like literally the film Poltergeist. We had every imaginable it was like Walking Dead.
Right.
My house was Walking Dead, Joe. And have you ever seen the series? There's the reservoir with like 10,000 zombies in it
Right.
in
Oh,
sort of
God.
like season 5 or 4 or 5 of Walking Dead.
I don't know how you cope with
That's the
those.
type of level of that's the amount of like damaged spirits and quote unquote negative ghosts we dealt with in this place. It was like the guides were working overtime, so we were like on 24/7. You know, we had a lot of just we were there to clear, like it was like a mass clearing. We had to be there to experience it, type of thing. And so I was tasked to do clearings of there was a lot of negative beings like in mass under at certain points in the
When
mountains
you say
around there.
negative, do you mean like negatively aligned, or were they just lost in a way?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, and the really hardcore ones, which were not that they were like, humans that had been there for eons and had it and gathered like mass powers, like dark sorcery type of stuff. It was like kind of Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings type of stuff, like full on.
That's
And I had
crazy.
I won't be able to go into full detail, but I had also, we were working with the dragon spirits and the inner earth beings there. They were bringing some of these people to us, so it was a massive healing of the area. But along the way, we experienced like things like right out of a Stephen King or a horror movie. It was like it was, and I had the pleasure to be in touch with a couple of researchers who were involved with like EVP or poltergeist phenomena, and they were like coming to our place in our area in dream time, and the stuff they were sharing with us was like right in parallel with some of the stuff that was we were discovering along the way that happened in the area. So man, it was like they were these beings were, I think. And then if we discovered that there was some sort of like astral prison, like these beings were unable to get up to the light. And so this is a whole other topic. We could do a whole other show about this, but the fourth dimension is now being cleared out. And so like people who were lost souls, and places you have, England's full of them too, right? Hauntings, all these places are going to be fully cleared out. And so we had the inner earth beings and other helpers bringing all these people to us, and I was like, guys, we have office hours, like middle of the night, 2-3 a.m. It's like, that now we have this other. So yeah, it was like, it was so
Fascinating.
it was so fascinating, so out of this world,
It is,
to
yeah.
be involved with that. But the ET
Were
guides
you
came in,
scared, or
and
were you?
even I became scared. It was that much volume. I was I have such strong protection, and we've done so many successful clearings over the years that uh I had no fear up until this point. That's how wiggy it was. It was like so gnarly how
Mm,
and it was so stealth. They were so able to camouflage themselves. So they was like, higher level 4D, and we had like what you might call a group of witches involved here.
right.
Like this was like they were so it was hardcore.
Yeah,
This
I
was like,
imagine.
yeah, and the only and as we would mention this to people locally in the area, they either didn't know about it, or some people told us, yeah, we tried to go to that shrine and clear it, and we couldn't do it. They said, one woman said she was like knocked out for 6 months.
Wow.
So like, as we met people in the area, is like, man, you don't know what you're taking on. So we finally got to the bottom of it, and in this July we were extracted. It was like, we were it was like a negative grid point. So we all of our spiritual skills were tested to the
Okay.
max.
Have you had
Yeah.
any of the kind of the, is it called the hitchhiker effect? Have you brought some of that home, or?
Yes. Yeah. So I would go, and part of this yeah, so I would go to, I would be guided to do like, a couple of the shrines were and the monolith, there's monoliths and dolmens in this area.
Mhm.
So it ties into that whole ancient network that we were talking about earlier with the Christ grave and the Christ sites. And so um uh for a long, long, long time, like uh black magic had been used there, or people like the area we lived at was known as, it was like a burial site for, it was a tomb of the king's grave, it was called king's tomb.
Mhm.
And so like, you've got your and have you heard of the egregore, like an
Yeah, in
egregore,
terms of like, well, I guess
the group
yeah,
soul?
the
Yeah,
soul,
so it
well,
was like this
aggregore, yeah,
land
just a generation
stuff,
of,
like a
yeah.
generational spirits and generational, it's like stuff that's saved and into the land. So it was a massive, massive land clearing of the whole area. And
Mhm,
so,
mhm.
man, we had a huge celebration once it ended, and it was a kind of stuff that, like, only the higher dimensional beings could have dealt with. So like, it was, wow, that was like beyond crazy. And so it one of the culminating events was that this mass of something flew right between my partner and I in broad daylight into our living room,
Wow.
into the den, and it was like it came right between us, and and landed on our shrine, our little altar in the living room. And then I was able to do a mass clearing there. So it was like, in the end, they were looking for support. A lot of this energy had no place to go, and it just kept getting darker and darker. So, yeah, we at the key moments we had beautiful dragon appearances in the clouds, like so it was like, man, that was one of the most insane culminating
Imagine.
experiences of our entire career here. Like,
Wow. I think as you say, the whole episode could just talking about that, I think. But I think I'll
yeah, the
let you
hitchhiker effect. That
get off and start your day, as it's
big
quite early
transit,
there,
yeah,
isn't
big
it?
big but yeah, it's so anyway, so people people so the reason why I mentioned it is that I find that the lower astral has been very chaotic lately. So people should be aware of their energies, and we know what feels good, like up the vibe, the name of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So keep your vibes up, and people should be aware that there are there's been a major crime uptick in the last few years in Japan too, and I've described that as the source of that being that there's a lot of very dangerous spirits. We had a mental hospital in the area as well, so like very deranged and dangerous spirits are like running rampant now, and they're going to get cleared, but sometimes the only portal are the awakening and the awakened. So they come in and they're looking to get they're looking for the light, but we have to realize that sometimes we get overtaken by that. It's called an overshadow experience or negative attachments.
Yeah.
So people should definitely be aware of that as well.
Well, it's all very otherworldly and fascinating. So well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a fascinating chat. I think we've covered a huge number of events.
Good to catch up. We had a lot to talk about this time, man. Oh man.
Definitely. I think we managed to fit a lot of it in. So that was fantastic. Is there anything you want to share with the audience? And for now, anything you want to
basically, I've had a couple. Our English channel has we've had a little bit of a blank, but I've got my interview with Paula Harris coming out there, and I've got some content. I want to release some more stuff from Japan into the English channel, so I'll send you a link for the Super Logical YouTube channel is on there. So yeah, I'll be hoping to do. I want to definitely come visit Ireland and England in next year. So hopefully we'll be able to meet up with a couple of our Japanese friends as well.
I'd love to get over to Japan myself one day. I've heard such good things about it. So
if anyone, the tourists are back in throngs, and it's an amazing time. It's really a cheap time to come to Japan. If everyone's thinking about it, come on and give us a shout. And we've got a couple more contact events happening this year. So I definitely want to have the ability to welcome visitors to Japan, and we're thinking about doing some tours like that. Believe it or not, I was on the phone with someone from Gaia a couple months ago, talking about doing events in Japan. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, and hopefully we'll speak another time and get another
many blessings. Have a great rest of the year. Cheers.
Thank you.